Steam curled from the bathroom door like a siren's call, and I froze, my sketchbook slipping from my hands. Ethan, my roommate, stepped out, a towel slung low around his hips, water droplets tracing the lines of his sculpted chest. In that split second, my carefully guarded world, built on quiet longing and unspoken truths, cracked wide open. I'm Jacob, 24, an art student scraping by in Brooklyn, where rent is a monthly punch to the gut. Ethan, my straight-as-an-arrow roommate, had been my rock since we met at NYU 2 years ago. He was the kind of guy who could charm a barista into free coffee, with blonde hair that caught the sun and a laugh that felt like summer. We'd shared late-night pizza runs, argued over Tarantino films, and built a friendship that felt like home. But I'd never told him the truth, that every time he grinned at me, my heart did a stupid little flip, and I hated myself for it. That morning, as he stood there, oblivious to the chaos he'd just unleashed, I scrambled to pick up my sketchbook. "Dude, you okay?" Ethan asked, his voice warm with concern, one eyebrow raised. I mumbled something incoherent, my face burning, and bolted to my room. I couldn't look at him, not because of the towel, but because I was terrified he'd see the truth in my eyes. I'd spent years hiding who I was, especially from him. Growing up in a small Ohio town, I'd learned early that being gay wasn't something you shouted from the rooftops. My parents' cold silences and the whispers at church had taught me to keep my heart locked tight. But Ethan? He was the one person who made me want to break that lock. By noon, I was still a mess, replaying that moment in my head. Ethan knocked on my door, now fully dressed in a navy hoodie and jeans, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "You've been weird all morning, Jake," he said, sitting on the edge of my bed. "What's up?" His green eyes searched mine, and I wanted to tell him everything. How his presence lit up our cramped apartment, how his casual hugs felt like a lifeline. Instead, I shrugged and said, "Just stressed about finals." He didn't buy it, but he let it slide, handing me a mug. "You know you can talk to me, right?" he said, and I nodded, my throat tight. That night, we went to a rooftop party in Williamsburg, the kind where fairy lights and cheap beer make everything feel magical. Ethan was in his element, laughing with friends, his arms slung around some girl named Mia. I stood by the edge, sketching the skyline to distract myself from the ache in my chest. Mia was nice, with a bright smile and a knack for storytelling, but watching her lean into Ethan felt like a knife twist. I'd always known he was straight. Hell, he dated half the girls in our friend group, but knowing didn't make it hurt less. "Yo, Jake, get over here," Ethan called, waving me over. I forced a smile and joined them, but my heart wasn't in it. As the night wore on, I slipped away to the fire escape, needing air. Ethan found me there, his breath visible in the chilly October air. "You're doing it again," he said, leaning against the railing. "Disappearing. What's going on with you?" His voice was soft, not accusing, and it broke something in me. I wanted to scream that I was in love with him, that every day with him was a beautiful kind of torture. Instead, I said, "Just tired, man." He didn't push, but he stayed, his shoulder brushing mine as we looked out at the city. "You're my best friend, Jake," he said quietly. "Don't shut me out." The words were a lifeline and a wound all at once. I nodded, unable to speak, and we stood there in silence, the city humming below us. For a moment, I let myself imagine a world where I could reach for his hand, where I could be brave. But fear won, as it always did, and I kept my hands in my pockets. The next week was a blur of classes and avoidance. I threw myself into my art, sketching Ethan in secret, his jawline, his hands, the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed. My sketchbook became a confession I'd never voice. But Ethan noticed my distance. One evening, he cornered me in the kitchen, where I was pretending to care about instant ramen. "Okay, enough," he said, crossing his arms. "You're avoiding me. Did I do something?" His voice cracked, and guilt hit me like a freight train. I wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, that it was me, my stupid heart, my fear of ruining everything. But I just shook my head, muttering, "It's nothing." That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I couldn't keep living like this, torn between loving him and hiding it. I needed to tell him, or let him go. The thought of losing him, though, felt like losing part of myself. I didn't know how to be Jacob without Ethan, but the truth was clawing its way out, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep it caged. The weight of my secret grew heavier each day, like a stone lodged in my chest. Ethan's concern only made it worse. He kept trying to pull me out of my shell, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. I started spending more time at the NYU art studio, hoping distance would dull the ache, but every brushstroke on my canvas seemed to trace his face. One rainy afternoon, I was alone in the studio, working on a painting of a stormy sea, my attempt to channel the chaos in my heart. Ethan showed up, his hair damp from the rain, carrying a paper bag from our favorite deli. "You've been ghosting me, Jake," he said, setting the bag down. "So I brought reinforcements, pastrami on rye, your favorite." His grin was disarming, and I hated how it made my resolve crumble. We sat on the studio floor, eating sandwiches and talking about nothing, movies, music, the usual. For a moment, it felt like old times, before my feelings had turned our friendship into a minefield. But then he asked, "Why do you keep pulling away?" His tone was serious now, his green eyes locked on mine. I froze, the sandwich halfway to my mouth. I could have lied again, but something in his gaze, raw, unguarded, made me want to be honest. "It's complicated," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He leaned closer, his knee brushing mine, and said, "Try me." My heart pounded, and for a fleeting second, I almost told him. But fear clamped down, and I mumbled, "Just school stress." He sighed, clearly frustrated, but didn't push further. That night, back at our apartment, Ethan suggested a movie marathon to fix my mood. We sprawled on the couch, a bowl of popcorn between us, watching Moonlight. The film's raw emotion hit too close to home, and I caught myself stealing glances at Ethan, wondering if he saw the parallels. Halfway through, he paused the movie and turned to me. "Jake, you know I'm here for you, right? No matter what." His words were earnest, but they felt like a spotlight on my secret. I nodded, my throat tight, and we finished the movie in silence. The next day, I met my friend Lila at a coffee shop in the East Village. Lila, a fierce lesbian with a knack for cutting through bullshit, had been my confidant since freshman year. Over lattes, I spilled everything. Ethan, the shower moment, my spiraling feelings. "You've got to tell him, Jacob," she said, her voice firm. "You're torturing yourself, and it's not fair to either of you." I knew she was right, but the thought of confessing terrified me. What if he freaked out? What if he moved out? Lila reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "You deserve to be honest with yourself. And he deserves to know who you really are." Her words stuck with me, but courage didn't come easily. Over the next few days, Ethan's presence felt like both a comfort and a curse. He'd leave sticky notes on my sketchbook, dumb jokes or doodles of stick figures, and each one made my heart ache. One evening, he dragged me to a karaoke bar in Chinatown with our friends. Ethan took the mic, belting out a cheesy 80s ballad with zero shame, and the crowd loved him. I watched, mesmerized, as he owned the room, his charisma lighting up the dim bar. When he dedicated the next song to my best bud, Jake, I felt like I was drowning in my own unspoken words. After karaoke, we walked home through the neon-lit streets, our shoulders brushing. "You were quiet tonight," Ethan said, nudging me. "You okay?" I wanted to scream that I wasn't okay, that I was in love with him, that every moment with him was a beautiful agony. Instead, I said, "Yeah, just thinking." He stopped walking, turning to face me under a flickering streetlight. "Jake, you're scaring me. Talk to me, please." His voice was raw, and the vulnerability in his eyes shattered my defenses. I took a deep breath, my heart hammering. "Ethan," but before I could finish, his phone buzzed. It was Mia, the girl from the rooftop party, asking to meet up. He hesitated, glancing at me, and I forced a smile. "Go," I said, my voice hollow. He left, and I stood there, alone, cursing myself for chickening out. Back home, I couldn't sleep. I grabbed my sketchbook and drew Ethan, his smile, his hands, the way he looked at me like I was the only person in the room. Each stroke felt like a confession, a way to say what I couldn't out loud. But as I stared at the drawing, I realized Lila was right. I couldn't keep hiding. I had to tell him, even if it meant risking everything. The thought was terrifying, but the alternative, living in this limbo, was worse. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow, I'd be brave. Tomorrow came, and my resolve wavered like a candle in the wind. I spent the morning in our apartment, pacing, rehearsing what I'd say to Ethan. "I'm gay, and I'm in love with you." The words felt like glass in my mouth, sharp, fragile, impossible. By noon, I was a wreck, my sketchbook open to a half-finished drawing of Ethan's eyes, their green depths haunting me, even on paper. Ethan came home from a run, his hair damp with sweat, his t-shirt clinging to his frame. "Yo, Jake, you look like you saw a ghost," he said, tossing his keys on the counter. I laughed nervously, my heart racing. This was it. I had to tell him. But before I could open my mouth, he said, "Mia's coming over later. You cool with that?" My stomach dropped. Mia again. I nodded, forcing a smile, and retreated to my room, my courage dissolving. Mia arrived that evening, all warmth and easy laughter, and the three of us ordered pizza. She was kind, asking about my art, but her presence felt like a wall between me and Ethan. I excused myself early, claiming a headache, and hid in my room, listening to their muffled voices through the thin walls. The sound of Ethan's laugh, so carefree with her, twisted the knife deeper. I grabbed my phone and texted Lila. "I can't do this. I'm losing him." She replied instantly. "You haven't lost him yet. Tell him, Jacob, you're stronger than you think." Her words gave me a spark of courage, but it wasn't enough. The next day, I avoided Ethan, heading to the studio before he woke up. I threw myself into a new painting, a chaotic swirl of blues and grays, my emotions spilling onto the canvas. Hours later, Ethan showed up, unannounced, with a takeout bag from our favorite taco truck. "You can't hide forever, Jake," he said, sitting cross-legged on the floor. "What's eating you?" His concern was so genuine it hurt. I wanted to tell him, but the words stuck, trapped behind years of fear. Instead, I deflected. "Just struggling with this piece." I lied, gesturing to the canvas. He studied it, his head tilted. "It's intense," he said. "Like you're fighting something." His insight caught me off guard, and for a moment, I wondered if he saw more than I realized. We ate tacos in silence, the air thick with unspoken words. When he left, I felt like I'd failed him, and myself. The next night, Ethan dragged me to a queer art exhibit in Chelsea, organized by one of our professors. "Thought it'd inspire you," he said, grinning. The gallery was alive with color and emotion, paintings of love, loss, and identity. One piece, a portrait of two men embracing, hit me like a punch. I stood frozen, imagining me and Ethan in their place. Ethan noticed my reaction and nudged me. "You okay, man? You look like you're about to cry." I forced a laugh, but my heart was screaming. This was the world I belonged to, the truth I was hiding from him. After the exhibit, we grabbed drinks at a nearby bar. Ethan was quieter than usual, his usual charisma subdued. "You've been different lately," he said, swirling his beer. "Like you're carrying something heavy." "I miss you, Jake." His words were a gut punch. I wanted to tell him everything, how I loved him, how I was terrified of losing him. But the bar was loud, and my courage was thin. "I'm just figuring some stuff out," I said, hating how vague I sounded. He nodded, but his eyes were sad, and I wondered if I was breaking his heart too. The next morning, I woke to find a note from Ethan on the fridge, "Gone to Mia's for the weekend. Let's talk when I'm back." Panic seized me. A weekend with Mia felt like a death knell for my hopes. I spent the day spiraling, imagining them together, my sketchbook filling with frantic drawings of Ethan's face. By Sunday, I was a mess, my room a chaos of paint and crumpled paper. Lila came over, took one look at me, and said, "This ends now. You're telling him when he gets back, or I'm dragging you to therapy." When Ethan returned that evening, he looked tired, his usual spark dimmed. "Jake, we need to talk," he said, his voice serious. My heart stopped. Had he figured it out? Was he about to confront me? I nodded, my mouth dry, and followed him to the couch. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading and craving. I took a deep breath, ready to spill everything, but he spoke first. "I think I'm falling for Mia," he said, and my world shattered. Ethan's words hung in the air like smoke, choking me. "I think I'm falling for Mia," he'd said, and I felt my heart splinter, each shard cutting deeper. I nodded, mute, as he talked about her laugh, her kindness, the way she made him feel alive. I wanted to scream, to tell him it was me who'd been there through every late-night crisis, every stupid joke, every moment that made us us. But I just sat there, my hands clenched, letting the moment slip away. "I'm happy for you," I managed, my voice a stranger's. Ethan frowned, sensing the lie, but I stood up before he could press me. "I've got a deadline," I mumbled, fleeing to my room. I locked the door and sank to the floor, my sketchbook staring at me like an accusation. Pages of Ethan's face, his smile, his eyes, mocked me. I'd waited too long, and now he was slipping away, falling for someone else. The truth I'd been too scared to share felt like a noose tightening around my neck. The next few days were torture. Ethan and Mia were inseparable, her laughter echoing through our apartment like a song I couldn't unhear. I buried myself in my art, skipping classes to avoid seeing them together. Lila called me out, dragging me to a diner in the West Village. "You're killing yourself over this," she said, her voice sharp but kind. "Tell him, Jacob. Even if he's with Mia, you owe it to yourself to be honest." I knew she was right, but the fear of losing him, of seeing disgust in his eyes, kept me silent. One night, unable to sleep, I wandered to the living room and found Ethan's jacket on the couch. I picked it up, the faint scent of his cologne hitting me like a wave. Without thinking, I slipped it on, the weight of it grounding me. That's when I saw his phone light up with a text from Mia. "Miss you already." My chest tightened, and I dropped the jacket, feeling like an intruder in my own life. I couldn't keep living like this, loving him in secret, watching him build a future with someone else. The next evening, Ethan came home alone, his face drawn. "Mia and I had a fight," he said, slumping onto the couch. "I don't know if this is going to work." My heart leaped, then crashed with guilt. I wanted him to be happy, even if it wasn't with me. "What happened?" I asked, sitting beside him. He told me about their argument, something about her wanting more commitment than he was ready for. "I don't even know what I want," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "I just know I don't want to lose the people I care about." His eyes met mine, and for a moment, I thought he meant me. This was my chance. My heart pounded, my palms sweaty. "Ethan, there's something I need to tell you." I started, my voice shaking. He leaned forward, his expression open, waiting. The words were there, on the tip of my tongue. "I'm gay. I love you." But then his phone buzzed again, Mia, apologizing, and the moment shattered. "Never mind," I said, standing up. "It's not important." He grabbed my wrist, his touch electric. "Jake, don't do that. Talk to me." But I pulled away, retreating to my room, cursing my cowardice. The next day, I threw myself into a new project, a mural for the NYU art show, a chance to showcase my work to galleries. I painted a cityscape at dusk, two figures standing close, their hands almost touching. It was us, Ethan and me, in a world where I could be brave. The mural consumed me, keeping my mind off the ache in my chest. Ethan noticed my absence and started leaving coffee outside my door, small gestures that made me love him more and hate myself for it. At the art show, the mural drew a crowd. Ethan showed up, alone, his eyes wide as he took it in. "This is incredible, Jake," he said, his voice soft. "Is this us?" My breath caught. I hadn't expected him to see it, to recognize himself in the brushstrokes. I nodded, unable to lie. "Yeah," I said. "It's how I see us." His gaze lingered on the painting, then on me, and for a heartbeat, I thought he understood. But then Mia arrived, slipping her arm through his, and the moment was gone. I turned away, my heart breaking all over again, knowing I couldn't keep running from the truth. The art show buzzed around me, but all I could see was Ethan and Mia, their arms linked, her laughter cutting through the crowd. My mural, with its hidden confession, felt like a scream no one heard. I slipped out to the gallery's balcony, needing air, needing to escape the weight of my unspoken love. The city glittered below, indifferent to my breaking heart. Lila found me there, her eyes sharp with worry. "You can't keep doing this to yourself, Jacob," she said. "You're tearing yourself apart." I told her about the mural, how Ethan had seen it, how close I'd come to telling him. "Then do it," she urged. "Even if he's with Mia, you need to set yourself free." Her words burned, but they lit a fire in me. I was tired of hiding, tired of letting fear win. I had to tell him, no matter the cost. Back inside, I found Ethan alone, studying my mural again. Mia was across the room, chatting with friends. This was my moment. My heart thundered as I approached him. "Ethan, can we talk?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. He nodded, following me to a quiet corner. The air between us was thick with tension, his green eyes searching mine. "What's going on, Jake?" he asked, his voice low. I took a deep breath, the words I'd rehearsed for weeks spilling out. "I'm gay," I said, the words trembling but true. "And I'm in love with you. I have been for a long time." Time stopped. Ethan's face was unreadable, his eyes wide, his mouth slightly open. I braced for rejection, for anger, for the end of everything. But he didn't speak. Instead, he stepped closer, his hand reaching for mine, his fingers brushing my palm. "Jake," he whispered, and the way he said my name sent a shiver through me. I don't know what to say. Before he could say more, Mia called his name, breaking the spell. He pulled back, his hand dropping, and I felt the world tilt. "I need to think," he said, his voice hoarse. He walked away, leaving me alone with my racing heart and a fragile hope. I'd done it. I told him. But the aftermath was a new kind of torment. What did his touch mean? Was it pity? Confusion? Or something more? The next few days were agony. Ethan was distant, spending more time with Mia, avoiding our apartment. I threw myself into my art, but every stroke felt hollow. Lila tried to keep my spirits up, but I was drowning in what-ifs. Had I ruined everything? Would he ever look at me the same way? One night, I found a note from him on the fridge. "Need some space. Staying at Mia's for a bit." My heart sank. I'd pushed him away, just as I'd feared. But then, a week later, Ethan came home. It was late, the apartment dark except for the glow of my desk lamp. I was sketching, trying to lose myself in lines and shadows. He stood in my doorway, his hair messy, his eyes tired but intense. "We need to talk," he said, and my stomach nodded. I nodded, setting my pencil down, bracing for the worst. "I broke up with Mia," he said, his voice quiet but steady. My breath caught. "I couldn't stop thinking about what you said. About you." He stepped closer, his hands shoved in his pockets, like he was holding himself back. I don't know what I am, Jake. I've never thought about guys like that. But you're different. You've always been different." His words were a lifeline, pulling me from the depths of my fear. I stood, my heart pounding, and asked, "What are you saying?" He looked at me, his eyes raw with emotion. "I'm saying I care about you, more than I realized. And I'm scared, but I don't want to lose you." My world tilted again, this time with hope. I stepped closer, our faces inches apart. "You won't lose me," I whispered. For a moment, we just stood there, the air electric, the weight of years of silence lifting. Then he reached out, his hand cupping my cheek, and I leaned into his touch, my heart soaring. Ethan's hand on my cheek was warm, grounding, a tether to a world I'd only dreamed of. In that moment, the apartment, our cluttered Brooklyn haven, felt like the only place that mattered. We stood there, inches apart, his green eyes searching mine, and I saw something new in them. Not fear, not pity, but a quiet courage that mirrored my own. "I don't know how to do this," Ethan admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I want to try. With you." My heart stuttered, hope and fear colliding. I wanted to ask 1,000 questions. What did this mean? Was he sure? But his touch silenced them. I nodded, afraid to break the spell, and he leaned in, his forehead resting against mine. It wasn't a kiss, not yet, but it was more intimate than anything I'd ever known. The days that followed were a delicate dance. Ethan was hesitant, navigating feelings he'd never explored, and I was patient, letting him set the pace. We didn't label it, didn't rush to define what we were. Instead, we let small moments build, his hand brushing mine over breakfast, our laughter filling the apartment during late-night movie marathons. One evening, as we sat on the couch, he took my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine. "This feels right," he said, and I believed him. But the world outside our bubble wasn't as kind. At a friend's party, whispers followed us, some curious, some cruel. Ethan's old frat buddies made snide comments, and I saw the tension in his jaw, the way he gripped his beer a little tighter. I wanted to shield him, to tell him he didn't have to face this yet, but he squeezed my hand under the table, a silent promise that he was in this with me. Later, on the walk home, he said, "I don't care what they think. I care about you." His words were a balm, healing wounds I'd carried since Ohio. Coming out to my family was harder. I called my parents, my heart pounding as I told them I was gay and in love with Ethan. My mom's silence was deafening, my dad's curt, "We'll talk later," a knife to the gut. But Ethan was there, holding me as I cried, his arms a safe harbor. "You're enough," he whispered, and for the first time, I believed it. I wasn't just the scared kid from a small town anymore. I was Jacob, artist, friend, lover, worthy of love, worthy of him. Months later, we stood on the rooftop where it all began, the city sprawling below us. My mural had won a spot in a local gallery, and Ethan had been my biggest cheerleader. Under the fairy lights, he pulled me close, his lips finally meeting mine. The kiss was soft, tentative, then deepening with a certainty that took my breath away. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours, a promise forged in courage and vulnerability. We didn't have all the answers. Ethan was still figuring himself out, and I was learning to trust that this was real. But as we stood there, his hand in mine, I knew we'd face it together. Love, I realized, wasn't about certainty or perfection. It was about showing up, scars and all, and choosing each other every day. My heart, once slipped out of control, had found its home, not in a place, but in him.